Hey guys, welcome to today's lesson on how to construct the human head. In this first video, we'll break down the proportions that you can use to build a head from different angles, with landmarks that we will place facial features on in part 2. With that, let's begin by drawing a head in a 3/4 angle. That is, halfway between one facing us head-on, so to speak, and one facing to the side in a profile view. You'll often see heads start out with a sphere, and our approach, based off the Loomis method, will follow suit. This sphere will represent the top portion of our head, but you'll notice on a human skull that the top portion follows the skull pretty closely, while the sides are actually a bit more flat. You can see what this looks like on this skull here. To represent that, we're going to draw an ellipse on the side of our sphere, kind of slicing off the extra width on both sides. But this already presents us with two questions. One, how tall should this ellipse be drawn? And two, how wide or circular should it be drawn? To answer the question of height, we can use a simple ratio in that the ellipse should be about 2/3 the total height of our sphere. This might seem tricky to draw out of your head, since we also want the ellipse to be centered on our sphere. But here's an easy trick to get that down. First, let's extend some light guidelines from the top and bottom of our sphere to note its height. Then I'm going to mark its halfway line. From here I want to divide each of these two sections into thirds, which I'll just eyeball. Now I can extend these lines on the top and bottom to get a measurement that is 2/3 the total height of the sphere. And with this determined, we can now address our second question in how wide to make the ellipse. To see how this would differ, take a look at these three portraits. On a figure looking straight on, we can see the ellipses are really narrow, but they are still there. This is because the skull tapers out a bit towards the back. So when looking straight on, we see just a bit of these sides. Whereas on this portrait, which is oriented similar to the one we are drawing, the ellipses get a bit wider. And on the side profile portrait, we can see the ellipse becomes a near perfect circle. Another way you can think about determining this width is to have the curve of the ellipse similar to the curve of the midline of the face. This doesn't apply as much to a forward view, since the midline of the face would just be a straight line at that point. But on a 3/4 view, you can see how the curve of the ellipse is similar to the curve of the midline across the sphere. And on a side profile view, the curve of the ellipse is just circular like the sphere. Now back to our drawing, I want to draw a vertical and horizontal axis line on my ellipse, which will help determine whether the head is tilting up or down. This horizontal line, along with the top and bottom portions of the ellipse, will help us extend lines across the curve of the sphere to orient the head facing upward like this, or downward like this. As for our vertical axis line, it should be drawn perpendicular to the horizontal line, such that they create 90-degree angles. To keep things simple for now, I'm going to draw my horizontal axis line like this for a fairly untilted head. Now again, you can see that the lines going through the top, middle, and bottom of our ellipse are straight, but we'll want to draw them curving around the sphere, giving us really helpful landmarks that we can use later. The top line is going to represent the hairline, the middle line determines the brow ridge, and the bottom line represents the base of the nose, which I want to emphasize is where the nose meets the upper lip, not the tip of the nose. Next, and this is just so cool to me, we can use the distance in between these lines to find where the jaw sits. If we view the space between them as being 1/3 the total height of the head, we can extend another third down to find where the bottom of the chin is. And of course, these proportions will shift slightly in every individual, but the repeating ratios of thirds and halves is a great tool for us to use. Now, I want to extend the midline of my face down to the chin, And for that, we need to note how it curves mostly at the top third of the head. But when it reaches the brow line, the curve lessens and becomes more straight, leading down the front of the face. And while it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, this portion of the midline is roughly parallel to the vertical axis we drew in our ellipse. I can use a similar idea when drawing the horizontal line of the chin. The width of the chin will generally be a bit narrower in women, but will be parallel with the horizontal axis of our ellipse. And here you can see what the chin placement would look like on the portrait photos we looked at before. The jaw will start just behind the vertical axis of our ellipse and extend at an angle downward. The corner of the jaw is roughly halfway between the bottom third of the face. And note how I curve that line slightly around. And from this angle, we're unlikely to see the jaw on the opposite side, so I'll just extend that side of the face down into the chin. From here, we can loosely lay in the arch of the cheekbones, which extend from the center of our ellipse down to the sides of the chin. Notice how this line sits in perspective on the right side of the face. You may ask if it's even worth putting in, but this is a structural detail that will add a lot of believability when we go to build further features on top. And with our jaw defined, I can add in the neck, which will be a pipe-like shape starting from behind the jaw and extending downward. You can see I drew an ellipse, as though seen through the bottom of the neck to help me visualize its form. You'll also notice I made the bottom of the neck slightly narrower than the top, which I like to do to emphasize how the muscles of the neck, the sternocleidomastoids for those interested, extend from behind the ear to the center of the bottom of the neck, near the collarbone. I'll loosely indicate the trapezius muscle on either side, which slope the neck down into the shoulders. You'll notice at this point I've erased some of our guidelines from the original sphere, just to keep things clean and readable. And with that, we've constructed the basic forms for a head, which will apply whether it's looking forward, to the side, or in between like this. These measurements will change if you're drawing a head from a more severe angle, where it's foreshortened toward the viewer. But we can talk about that in a future lesson. For now, we've covered a lot already, so we'll pause here. Stay tuned for part 2 though, where I'll show you how to draw anatomically accurate facial features on top of this base. And if this video helped you, give it a like and subscribe so that the algorithm will push this out to others who want to learn real, tangible art skills. I'll see you guys later, and until then, keep creating.